The Varieties of Narcissism, Introduction. Every now and then, I come across people who feel the need to sign up for psychological treatment but mainly look for the causes of their problems outside of themselves, and seek an external solution for their issues. They do experience a certain level of distress, but they assume that it is not they who need to change, but the world around them. However, since the world around them is not going to change, they feel compelled to go into therapy. If only to be able to show the company doctor that they have done everything they could to recover. Conversations usually go awkwardly, and the real issues don't come up enough or not at all. But yeah, that annoying society puts a knife to their throat. Isn't there a method or technique that the therapist can use to quickly and efficiently fix the problem? Preferably without all that talking about the past. The therapist begins to experience feelings of fatigue, reluctance, or aversion after a shorter or longer period of time. This can sometimes become very difficult. In favorable cases, a working relationship is established, and the client manages to achieve some sort of gain after a sometimes lengthy process. In unfavorable cases, the treatment stalls in one way or another, leading to an unsatisfactory, sometimes even unpleasant ending. The failure or lack of progress in treatment is often attributed to the therapy or the therapist sooner or later. This can all occur in the treatment of typical forms of narcissistic issues. But what exactly is narcissism? It is quite a complex concept that cannot be described in just a few words. Yet it is a phenomenon that seems to be occurring ever more frequently, and the term narcissism is being used ever more often in the media. Reason enough to take a closer look at it. The term originally comes from Greek mythology, where the young Narcissus falls in love with his own reflection, mirrored in a pond. Narcissism is a concept in psychoanalytic theory, which was introduced by Freud in his essay on Narcissism, 1914. Narcissistic personality disorder is a diagnostic category in the globally used Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM, which had its fifth version released a few years ago. So, there's quite a bit of literature on narcissism, but what exactly is narcissism at its core? What are the essential characteristics of it? We act as if the term narcissism covers the essence of an existing entity. The idea that a diagnostic label, an abstract concept, represents something that actually exists, a physical entity, is called reification. It's a misunderstanding created by our brain. The diagnostic label narcissism stands for a complex set of behaviors and observations in which a certain configuration is visible that is classified as being pathological. It involves a clinical impression and statement made by a professional sufficiently knowledgeable. But in this case we will stretch the concept of narcissism in a broader sense to involve a general tendency to put oneself first, to make use of others, to create a self-image based upon artificial opinions of others and fantasies, characteristically accompanied by a tendency to devaluate others and a lack of empathy. In this case it is more of a survival strategy in a more or less hostile universe, promoted by a society that ever more stretches the importance of success, in which the role of social media is becoming all-pervading and crucial. Almost nobody escapes the digital revolution. For reasons of comprehensiveness I have made a preliminary distinction between several degrees of severity of narcissism. The first and least obnoxious variety is what I will call common-day narcissism. It is the narcissism that permeates our society ever more intensively and which is exacerbated enormously with the advent of social media. It was there all the time, of course, even in ancient times, but it has become more usual and is nowadays considered completely normal. It has to do with such things as being first, getting your way, cheating on others, creating a false impression, not caring about the suffering of others, neglecting your deeper needs and attaining success in society. Most people would say that it is normal and even healthy. People who do not have this enough are often considered to be losers, softies, incompetent or naive. Then there is the variety that I will call intermediate narcissism. This is about people who are socially accepted members of society but who are deep inside excessively jealous, competitive, dominant, intrusive or manipulative and thus also intrinsically unhappy. The intermediate narcissist is unable to acknowledge and bear the suffering that has been done to her or him during childhood or later, covering it up with a false story in a show of good cheer and nothing wrong with me. They are often charming, popular, and socially agreeable in a superficial sense. But as soon as they enter the zone of human intimacy, they will become hyper-vigilant, emotionally withdrawn, sometimes even paranoid. People are essentially a means to certain goals they have in mind, so intimacy is also a field of instrumental activity. Sometimes they may derail at a certain moment in time, getting into a crisis, hurting themselves or others, but not necessarily. They have often become addicted to a certain lifestyle, and addiction is a regular theme for them. They will not flinch back from the use of occasional dirty tricks, slander, ugly gossip, cheating or other means to have their way, so long as this may go unnoticed to the outside world. The more intelligent of these will make use of social interactions in a passive-aggressive way and will use manipulative stories, suggestions, accusations etc. to demonize or hurt their adversaries, so the role of language can become very important here. They may marry, have children, partake in religious activities, be socially more or less acceptable, but deep inside they remain unfulfilled, angry, jealous, craving for more. Their narcissism has convicted them to a life of inner isolation and emptiness. Especially when they get older, this may surface and lead to all kinds of problems. Then there is the variety that I will call toxic narcissism. Let's be clear about this term. I have called this toxic because it becomes apparent, sooner or later, that this is obviously the case, but in principle all kinds of narcissism have a hidden toxic component that is the source or the seed of it. But in this variety one will no longer be able to neglect the toxic and obnoxious quality of it, and it also comprises what I will call perverse or pathological narcissism. This has become a more or less popular subject for YouTube videos, which we will come upon later. Here we stumble upon the dangerous and adverse effects that these people may have upon others, especially close ones such as spouses, children or other family members. All the characteristics that are being described in case of the intermediate narcissists are fully operational here also, but in a more pernicious, cloaked or mean way. These people are what is generally termed bad, but as long as they are able to get away with it without serious consequences, they seem to have no problem. That is because the function of their conscious faculty, their capacity for empathy, remorse, and ability to put themselves in the shoes of others is deficient or absent. So these people are deeply disturbed inside and have developed the habit of externalizing their pain and discomfort, inflicting the hurts and humiliations that they neglect and deny in themselves on others. There is a lot to say about this category, but we will come back to it later. For the moment it is important to keep in mind that narcissism may have all kinds of outward appearances and variations which go largely undetected by most people. It is my intention to elucidate the general structure behind these several varieties and degrees of severity so as to make visible the principles and working mechanisms behind it. Also, it is my intention to let people have a look at their own narcissistic tendencies, since it is my conviction that in our modern-day society few people are unafflicted with these. I would call it generally healthy and advisable to detect these tendencies in oneself, since they usually are cultivated and encouraged in our present-day society to such a degree that practically nobody can remain free from them, and, since people around us are caught up in the same development, it will go largely unnoticed by us or them. Then we come upon the big question if narcissism can be cured. We will dive into this extensively and explore the ways in which that may be possible, at least for some, albeit not all of us.